Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other light-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone.
Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad you could join me tonight. This is my favorite time of my favorite day of the whole week because it's the time when I get to talk to somebody who talks my own language. And I have with me Yael Schiller. She's written a fabulous book, and I am just so excited to talk to her about it. Here's a little bit of the blurb they give you on the book cover. Imagine a dreamscape where you can connect with your ancestors, identify inherited patterns that cause you pain and heal them while still gaining ancestral blessings. With this first-of-a-kind book, it's possible to do that and even more. This book features dozens of exercises and personal stories that enhance your understanding. This book takes you on a healing journey from grief to peace and healthy connection with your departed loved ones. You can even pass on healing energy to future generations, which sounds fascinating. Linda teaches you how to tap into the consciousness of your dreams, both in sleep and sleep adjacent practices such as trance, meditation, and guided imagery. Whether you practice alone or with a group, this book helps you to dream the world you hoped for into being. Linda is a mind, body, and spiritual psychotherapist, consultant, author, and international teacher. She's the author of Modern Dreamwork and PTS Dreams. And of course, that's the book that I've had her on the show once before. So if you enjoy this one, check out the dream category and listen to our show on the PTS Dream book. She facilitates group dream circles, provides individual, group, and corporate consultation, and trains professionals on working with dreams. Her book is a pleasure. It's ancestral dreaming, and it was absolutely enlightening for me because in this field, no matter how long you've been in the field, there's always something that can enhance and stretch you. There's always something to learn from everybody. And that's why I love this show so much, because in many ways I get to talk to experts in fields and don't have to pay them for an hour or 2 hours of tutoring and get to read their books. And it's not work, it's joy, it's a pleasure, it's a learning situation. And this book especially was a phenomenal read for me because of course I am attached to my ancestors. I have genealogy myself up the wazoo. And it's a pleasure to find other ways that I can contact them, work with them, and actually sort of snowball their blessings onto the next generation. So it is with great pleasure that I welcome Lynn to the show. Linda, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Barbara. It's a pleasure to be back with you again.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been about I'd guess about 3 years, because that seems to be the time frame between each of my books.
Well, this book was just, and we spoke earlier about Jason DeBorg. The format is very similar to his format in his books too. So it was a pleasure to read about something and then hear the story of someone who had utilized that particular
Mm.
technique, and it's I've been fascinated with my ancestors for a very long time and done the genealogy, and I've got lots of their stuff all over the place. But
Mm.
this book gives you a way of tapping into their energetics and pulling them into your here and now and your reality and getting to know them a lot better, which is
Mm.
fascinating for me. What prompted you to write a book like this? It's a fabulous book, but what was your prompt? What was it that pulled you into it?
So what pulled me into it was a number of synchronicity circumstances and then a dream, of course. Um, so the background context that will help you understand how this connected me to the book is I have ancestors from Kiev, from the Ukraine.
Oh,
So that's
wow.
the background piece. So that's just to put that aside. But a couple of years ago, a member of IASD, the International Association for the Study of Dreams, a colleague of mine there was an American volunteer working in the Ukraine to help the war trauma survivors. And he wrote to me and was using my book, actually, PTS Dreams, to help the war survivors in the Ukraine with their nightmares from the trauma of war. And so we developed a correspondence around that. And then he discovered that my first book, how I don't know, but my first book, Modern Dreamwork, has been translated into Russian, of all things, many
Whoa.
years ago, which is very, very similar to Ukrainian. So then he bought that book and he used Modern Dreamwork to help teach the Ukrainian war trauma survivors English. So there were several layers of connection there. And it felt like such a full circle for me because my ancestors had to flee the Ukraine because of pogroms in the early 19th century. So
Mhm.
my grandfather and his parents left, I think it was 1903, and eventually made their way to America. So the fact that I could have a hand in helping people heal from modern day trauma really felt like kind of the closing of a circle for me of being able to help in some way remotely, even people who at one point in time were, oppressing and
Yeah.
persecuting my ancestors.
Wow. Okay, you're back.
I'm back. I know I saw it blanked out for a minute there.
Yeah. No,
Uh,
I am so fascinated with the ancestors
yeah,
and to be able to use these to help people who had been through trauma and hurt.
yeah, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. So let me tell you the other piece of the story. So sometime after his name is actually is Jose, and after Jose and I had been in contact, I had a dream, and here's the dream, and it's in the book. You read it already. But I had a dream about borscht, which is an Eastern European peasant soup made of beets. And in the dream, this is the whole dream that I dreamt. I am teaching some students how to make borscht, and it's not going so well, and I need some help. And a chef shows up in my dream, and he says, "Oh no, you need this extra piece of equipment called a shredder to make the borscht." And so he brings the shredder. He teaches me how to make the borscht, and then we make delicious borscht. I go back to my students. I say, "Okay, we have to start over. We have to use the shredder." And they're like, "Oh, we don't want to start over again." I said, "No, we need this piece of equipment and we need this knowledge to be able to make something that really is nutritious and tastes good." That was the dream. So that's what prompted me to write the book. So as I unpacked the dream to understand the meaning of it, and I did some of it on my own, and I did some of it in consultation with some friends of mine, because we all know that you can't, even Carl Jung said he needed someone else, at least one other person, to help
Yeah.
him see the ins and outs of his dreams. Because it's kind of like trying to see the back of your own head. You can't do it without at least two mirrors, right? You just can't. So I talked with my friend, and what we came up with in the dream is, first of all, when you're doing dream work, you think about what are the major, what's the storyline, which I just told you, what's the emotional storyline in the dream, and then what are the objects, and what are your associations to the objects. So in my dream, my emotional storyline was, I was really curious about why it wasn't working at first. I was really happy about getting his help, and then really excited about teaching other people about how to make borscht. So borscht, what is borscht? It's made of beets.
Yeah.
Beets are red. They grow in the ground. Their roots grow in the ground. So a beet is often called a bloodroot. So already we're getting into the ancestry connection, because it's a dream about my roots and about my blood roots. And in the dream, anyone who's ever had a beet knows you have to kind of work at it a bit to make it taste good and to make it edible. It's kind of like a lump of hard stuff otherwise.
Yeah.
So it had to be processed. Now we can read that word at multiple layers of meaning, the word processed, right? So in the dream, I was given a shredder. So I was given this special machine to help grind the beets up and process them so that they could be nutritious, metabolized, and used to nourish the people who ate the soup. So in order to use my connection with my blood roots, with my beets, with my relatives, I had to process this material with the right equipment, with the right machinery, if you will, to be able to make something that could be eaten by others. And given the particular history with the Ukraine that I had, another meaning of the word shredder, like on one hand, it's like a food processor. It grinds up food so we can eat it. But when we think of the word shred, to be shredded means to be torn apart, means to be flayed. And if any of the listeners ever had like a love breakup or something, they sometimes might feel, oh, I feel flayed. My heart is shredded. So there was that layer of meaning too. So what I took as my intention and then the action step, right? Because a dream isn't done until you've figured out not only what it's telling you, but what it's asking you to do, and then start to do it. So my action step was to make my blood root ancestry images and relationships palatable and available so other people could also heal any ancestral wounds that they have.
It's a great story. And I thought, when I saw you were making soup at first, I thought, oh, this is great, because it took something mundane and you were able to extrapolate some very important information, that you could share with other people.
Yeah.
And that to me is amazing. Now you have 6 ways you delineate that ancestors will try to contact us. And just, I kept reading through the book thinking, geez, I haven't had any of these nightmares. I haven't had any of these. I don't feel, but I feel my ancestors around me. I certainly, feel them communicating.
Well, if you recall, the 6 ways they might contact us, only 2 of the 6 really have to do with nightmares.
Yeah.
Right? The others are gentle, loving ways they might contact us to give us a blessing, to give us a gift, to give us information, to give us assistance in something, and then to ask to be remembered by us and subsequent generations. And then there are 2 categories where, if they died with unresolved pain or wounds or trauma, they may not have been able to finish going all the way over to the other side of the veil, and they're stuck in between, and they're asking for our help.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that might be connected with nightmares. And then the other one is if we had ancestors who were grudge holders. And sometimes, from generation to generation, there's a grudge, there's bad blood. We might know why, we might not know why. And sometimes from the other side, they come and say, we want you to perpetuate this and carry this on, just like, the Montagues and the Capulets or the Hatfields and the McCoys.
Yeah.
And then we have to deal with those messages, those contexts in a very particular way, because, we have to also say no and not carry on that kind of a memory. So our job might be different depending on the different ways our relatives passed, our relationship with them, and what reason they've come to us for.
I know. I shared with you before. I recently have come into the ownership of a lot of the fine work that relatives did over the last 200 or 300 years, meticulous handwork and things like that. And I had some of it, and I gave it to someone who. I have cats, and so you can't put lacework and frilly things out because they're going to get destroyed. Right. And so I gave mine to a friend who was going to treasure them and use them, and I suddenly have gotten a larger amount of them, and I realized that they were given to me once, and I gave them away. They're being given to me again, and I stood in the middle of all this, and I said, I get the message. I'm keeping.
Yeah. Barbara, our sound is breaking up.
I don't know what I was trying to figure out.
Our sound is breaking up here.
Okay.
Now it's okay. I don't know what happened, but I just wanted to let you know that.
Well, anyhow, so all of this, I've painted a deck of cards that are hand painted mandalas that deal with patterns and color, and it was sort of, the message was, you haven't gone far enough with all of this. We're reminding you to keep going.
Okay. It's oh, go ahead. I was going to just say something about your being regifted a second time, but finish what you were saying first.
No, the regifting was very obvious. It was very clear. Okay, I'm going to do something with this stuff.
Right. So you got the message because you were really listening and paying attention that there's something you're not done with.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really fascinating because you're tuned in, because you're a psychic, and because you're connected between worlds, you got the message pretty quickly. Someone else may not have realized that or had known what that means. They might just say, what am I going to do with this stuff now? I'm just going to put it in storage, but I see your cat climbing thing behind you. Yeah. And we've got cat climbers all over the house, just not in this room. I have the door closed for this room. They're actually right here behind me. I'll just show you because it's a really sweet picture. These are my two babies.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. One of them has since passed. This is actually a very good story. So we're at the moment down to one. Effie and Minnie, they were twins from the same litter, and we were only planning to get one because we already had a cat, and we couldn't leave the other behind because they were joined at the hip. So we brought them both home, and they were great cats. And about 2 years ago, one of them died, and the cat we have now still left. Effie one day got out of the house, and they occasionally get out of the house, even though there's too many wild animals around, so we don't want to let them out too often, or unsupervised. He immediately ran to the corner of the backyard behind our forsythia bushes where we have a little cat cemetery. And he started sniffing around at his brother's grave.
Well,
it was just fascinating to watch him do this.
I have been a fanatic with, I was called lovingly the cat lady because at one time when I was doing the show, I had 12 of them. And
that's a lot of litter to scoop.
No, my late husband brought 3 when we got married, and that took us to 12. And I looked at him and I said, you have to bring the cats or you can't come. But you have to do the litter boxes because it will be overpowering. And so we had lower level cats, we had middle level cats, and we had upper level cats. They never left their level. And on my refrigerator, I had a list of how many mice we were in the woods. So how many mice each of them had gotten, had gotten over a season. And the upstairs cats won because they also had caught birds that had come in through the cat door. So,
even though we don't live in the woods, we live in sort of like a suburban area of
Yeah.
of Boston. Periodically, a mouse will somehow get in, and our cat will leave a little present for us, somewhere. Just happy when it's not on the bed.
After my husband died, one of my cats woke me up and dropped a mouse on my chest that was not all the way gone.
Ouch.
And so I had the bedroom door closed for quite a while.
Yeah.
But back to dreams. I want to let's talk about the 6 ways you delineate how our ancestors come through and try to contact us, because lots of times people won't understand that it's not something that's current, but it deals with ancestral stuff, and it's important to help to resolve that so that we don't carry it forward to the next generation.
Right. Unless it's something we want to carry forward.
Yeah.
Right. If our ancestors have come, so the first way they come through, what I talked about in the book, is simply to say, I'm still here. You're not alone. I'm not really gone. And they can come in sleeping dreams. They can come in those dream adjacent. We're walking in the woods, and all of a sudden you just feel their presence. And that's true. That's not just your imagination. And in dreams, there are 2 kinds of ways our friends and relatives can show up. One is as a dream character or a person in a dream, and the other is as a visit. And they're both good and they're both valid, but they're a different kind of connection. Because in the dream, there's a person who looks like your mom or looks like your husband, and it's them, but it's not really them. It's somebody in the dream.
Yeah.
And so you're experiencing the dreamness of it in the moment of whatever else is going on in the dream. But when we have a visit, there's what Eugene Gendlin, who developed focusing, called felt sense. And we get that frisson, that vibration, that feeling in our bodies that some real person is there in the room with us. We can smell their aftershave or feel their jacket vibrate. One woman said that she could feel her husband kiss her cheek one night, years after he had passed. And it was just as real as if he had been still sleeping next to her. So the quality of a visit is different.
Yeah.
When they come through that way. Yeah.
I know that that a lot of these, the 2 of the ones that are the, hi, we're still here, and the, remember us and send our story forward.
Right.
Which is really, I think that's the other thing. I have these gorgeous handmade quilts that, had to take forever to make. And it's sort of like they had been in cedar chests and things like that for, I think the ladies that made them, it was 170 years ago.
Wow.
So now they're hanging on my railing that it kind of overlooks the downstairs, so that people can see this intricate work that these strong women, this is after milking the cows and cooking meals and taking care of babies and stuff like that. Then they also made these gorgeous quilts. And it's sort of, to me, it was a message to all women that no matter how busy you are, you have a creativity in you that you can make a baby. I mean, you have the creative ability to create life. And if you put your hands to work in creating something that is of a creative nature, it enhances your own spiritual development and enriches your life.
Right. And that creativity can be quilting, it could be painting, it could be writing, it could be dancing, it could be doing theater, it could be writing poetry, it could be any form of creativity. And what I'm particularly struck by, Barbara, with that story that you just told, is that you found the way to make meaning out of the inheritance of these quilts. They weren't simply, to keep us warm at night, though that's very important too.
Oh,
But
yeah.
you wove another layer of story around strength of women and weaving it together with strength and creativity that made it even bigger of a story and a message then to carry
Yeah.
out into the world than the original pieces of fabric would have been.
Yeah, I think that, I preach creativity. I preach it
Mhm.
because to me it's the creative energy that fuels our spiritual growth and development.
Yeah.
And so, I when I thought, it's almost as though they are providing me with another way to express the journey that we're on this lifetime. Our lives are a quilt. We are a mosaic. And
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
and 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 the to recognize that the pieces of our life create a mosaic of eternal growth and love.
That's beautiful. It's very, not surprising. Since writing this book and starting to do podcasts, I don't know if you can see it on the show because my name is right covering, but I have this really beautiful necklace on. I don't know if you can see it. I can't see it because my name is covering it, but
Yeah.
it's all these little tiny, tiny glass crystals, and it
Mhm.
was my mother's. And when she died, as the only daughter, I inherited the jewelry. Most of her jewelry was not my taste in what to wear, but
Yes.
this was totally my taste. So I've made a point of wearing it when I'm talking about ancestors as a way to honor her and keep her with me while I'm doing this work and bringing her story forward. And I feel like every time I tell the story of, the necklace and bringing her forward, I hear my daughter's voice talking about what she got from her grandmother
Ah.
and her future children, which haven't been born yet, lurking in the wings. I'm waiting to inherit this as well.
Well, I think that it's important to give today's generation is very different from when we were kids.
Yeah.
And I have a granddaughter who's now 21, 22. Um, a long time ago, going back maybe 70 years or so, it was very in the whatever for uh it was the gold beads, the not the pearls, but the gold beads
Oh, okay.
that every and my grandmother had a set, my mother
Yeah.
had a set, and after my grandmother had died, it was interesting because my mother had her beads and my grandmother's beads. She said, "Well, someday I'm going to have them strung together," and well, she never did.
Mm.
And so I had a necklace that was a single pearl, and I took it to the jeweler and I said, "Okay, so the pearl is the grandmother. That's me.
Mm.
And on the right side, I want a gold bead from my grandmother's necklace, and on the left side, I want a bead from my mother's
Oh,
necklace."
right.
So, and they made it into a very, it's very delicate.
Yeah.
And I gave it to my granddaughter, and I said, "Now look, this is not costume.
Yeah.
This came from your great grandmother and your grandmother, your grandmother, your great grandmother, and your great great grandmother. So
Yeah.
it's your grandmother necklace. It's a memory of history."
Right. Right.
And the jeweler was so thrilled with it. He didn't charge me for making it.
Oh my goodness, what a gift.
Yeah.
I'm just sort of struck by that, like the pearl of wisdom in
Mhm.
the center of the necklace, and that she now wears it around her neck. And it reminds me that when we have something from our ancestors that we can actually wear is even more special, but that we can
Yeah.
hold and touch. If it's a quilt, if it's lace, if it's candlesticks, if it's whatever it is, we get that physical vibration. And it reminds me of, and I just thought of this now, this minute, it reminds me of the art of tattooing,
Yeah. Oh,
where
yeah.
you engrave your memories on your body so that you will remember them all the way into your skin. And I think it came to me because in 2 months, I'm going to New Zealand to teach Dreamwork. So I've
Oh,
been reading up on the Maori culture a lot, and they're very, very tattooed. And
very.
I've learned that they have 2 different types. They have their clan tattoo, and which includes all the ancestors, and then they have their personal signature tattoo, and they're both somewhere on their bodies.
So you're going to get a tattoo?
No. Well, let me. No, I'm not. But I've thought of.
Doesn't have to
I have
show.
thought about it. But I'm a pain wimp, so I don't think I'm going to, particularly not in a foreign country.
Probably not. Yeah, no, there is that element of wanting to be a part of a tradition and yet making it your own.
Right. Right. Yeah. I don't think tattoos are in my history. Also, in this day and age, and this came up as I wrote this book on ancestral healing, because I looked at a lot of indigenous cultures and their history with ancestors and with dream work. We have to be careful not to be, cultural appropriation. So I want to really respect that that's their tradition. That's not my tradition, but I appreciate it and I associated to it when I'm thinking of the artifacts we were talking about.
But you do. I know the one thing of my mother's that when we split things up, my sister got that I coveted.
I knew you were going to say that word. I almost said it.
I did covet it. It's a floating opal piece, and my sister is not a jewelry person, and she's recently come to live in Nashville because she has an illness and she needs to be in assisted living.
Right.
And I said to her, look, I don't want it now, but at some point in time, if you're not going to wear mom's floating opal, and she's not a jewelry person.
Is it a floating opal? Is that a necklace? I know, but
It's a necklace. It's kind of like it's a glass bulb, and in it, suspended in liquid, are chips of opals that float. And she gave it to me for Christmas. And I am so thrilled that I got it, and she didn't have to die. And that made it even more special.
Yeah.
But as when I hold it, it's like a meditation, watching the chips in it float around and just the iridescence of them, the colors and everything. It's like a meditation, and it's like my mother's there.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
That's wonderful. I'm so happy for you and happy that your sister was able to gift it to you, so you get it it's like a double gift then.
Yes, without croaking. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the only one it would have gone to, but still it was a lovely gift. And but back to the dreams, because much as I love your work and all of this makes great sense to me, because I don't really have, how do I invite the ancestors are all around me. I trip over things from them. I've got tons of them here. But what if I wanted to have a closer connection? How do you invite them into your dream state?
That's a great question. So the first step is you have to want to, right? So if it didn't matter to you, or you don't care, or it's like, oh, whatever, then they're not going to probably come unless they have something really, really important they want you to know. So the first step after being interested in connecting with them sometimes is to issue an invitation. Because sometimes our relatives are very prim and proper and would not dream of showing up without a proper invitation. So you can invite them by simply, before going to sleep at night, saying, hey, mom, hey, grandma, I'd love to have you come and pay a visit in my dreams. I'm open and ready to greet you. And that might be enough. If it's insufficient, the next step is to make it more concrete. And then you get your dream journal, which hopefully listeners who are interested in their dreams have right next to their bed,
Yeah.
because dreams are like whiffs of smoke and puffs of air. You sit up too fast, they're gone because they come from another place in our consciousness. So, in order to really retain the memory of what we dreamt, we have to anchor it in writing. So we'll get back to that later, but you can use the same book that you write your dreams down in to write an invitation to whoever you would like to invite in. And you can be very generic. You can say, Dad, I'd really like to see you in my dream tonight, and please come. Or you could say, Dad, I've really been wondering about X, Y, or Z, or I'm really missing you and I want to ask you some questions, and here are the questions I want to ask you. You can write, a whole little narrative there, and then put your attention on that before you go to sleep. And you're greatly enhancing the possibilities then that they will see the path open and welcoming for a visit.
Well,
And then just not to give up if they don't come the first couple times.
yeah. Well, I think a journal is an important thing for everybody to have, and for synchronicities, for coincidences, for dreams, for you name it, recipes. I tell people to get just a spiral binder, and because lots of people will buy the journals and they're too good. I want to save it for something special, and they never write in them. So it's for me, it's just when something neat happens, put it down. You want to remember it. You want to remind yourself. But one thing also, I want to add on to your, write it down immediately. I have mine in the bathroom. Because the dream will stay
where
with
you
me
go when you wake up at night. Yep, I'm in that party too. I've been known to get up from bed, grab my dream book, and carry it with me to the bathroom.
The older you get, the more likely you are to need to take it with you when you go, rather than sit there. I mean, let's be real. You talk about the container of sapphire light protection to use before you do journeying, and that is a phrase I have heard in context to lots of things as far as using it as a spiritual protection.
Yeah, right. So the color blue in general shows up cross-culturally all over the world, across time, back, centuries and forward as well. Varying shades of blue show up as the color of the gods, of protection, of healing. The Hindu gods and goddesses are often painted with blue faces. If there's any fantasy fans out there, in Avatar, the movie, all of the beings were blue. They had blue faces. And this particular color blue is what is written in the Tanakh, which is the Hebrew Bible. When Moses goes up on the mountain, he wants to encounter God face to face. I'm using the word God, by the way, just as shorthand. So fill in the word of your choice, the divine energy, whatever works for you. So he wants to encounter the divine, but the divine says, no, because no one can look into my face and still live. But so they make a deal. So Moses turns his face, right? This is all in Exodus, I think, into the cleft of the rock, and the divine passes behind him. And then when Moses peeks, all he sees are the bricks underneath the divine's feet, and they're the color sapphire. That's the color of them. And that color shows up a few other times. It shows up in the story of Ezekiel, when Ezekiel with the wheels spinning around and the chariot. So the chariot is sapphire as well. So in the mystic tradition of Kabbalah, this color sapphire was chosen by Colette, who was one of the first female Kabbalists, to be the color of divine healing and protection. And then she passed it on to her students, who then have passed it on. And I'm in that line now of carrying the color of protection forward.
Well, it's also the color of the throat chakra,
Right.
which is, communication and creativity, and so that does go along with the color being important for protection, because in the work that we do, it is important to have a form of protection, something around you that
Right.
that protects you. And I love the fact that you brought it in with a color that related to ancestry work, because in many ways, when we ask for protection, we are drawing on that ancestry link as well.
Right.
So
Right.
it flows beautifully together, and
Right.
it's also my favorite color. So
Yeah, I don't know if you can see, I'm wearing like a dark teal, which I almost always wear some. For years and years and years, I was the purple girl, and I wore various shades of purple, and I still love that color. And one day, one of my clients walked into my office when I was wearing some kind of a sapphire or teal colored sweater, and she looks at me and she said, "Linda, that's your spirit color." And I got that aha, I got that felt sense where I said, "Oh, you're right." And so since then, it has become a larger part of my wardrobe.
well, it's I think that everybody probably has a color that makes them feel protected. And
Yeah.
if I think that in this work, in this field, whether it's dreams, whether it's um, gosh, remote viewing, whether
Yeah.
it's out of body, exploration, having some form of protection
Right.
is very important.
And what's really interesting and important is it's protection and connection, both. And later on in the book, I talk about when we need protection and when we need connection, and sometimes we need both. So when we form that circle of sapphire light around us, it's to be a boundary, and as I talk about in the book, a boundary is not only something that keeps things out, but it actually has several layers of function, and I learned this years ago from my work with Judith Swack from HBLU, Healing from the Body Level Up. And the boundary balance, the boundary itself keeps things out and lets things in,
Hmm.
keeps things in, lets things out, and then connects across other boundaries. And the metaphor that was a biochemist before she became a body, mind, spirit teacher, was a cell. So if we think of the blue circle of light as a cell wall, depending on the need, that cell wall, that blue boundary, can serve any of those protective and connective functions.
One of the other forms of protection it's a really old one, and it comes from the spiritualist church. That to seal the energetic that is you. If you cross
Right.
your ankles and fold your hands, you have sealed yourself. So you have to get
Mm,
through.
interesting.
And
You know, it's
it's such an old wives' tale that to me it must have some meaning to it and behind it, because it's been around a long time.
well, in the Abrahamic faiths, which includes Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, we all have the same ancestors. So our spiritual books all overlap in some way, shape, or form. And that seal shows up in all of those books, and I'm sure in other traditions as well. Some version of the word seal, to it in Hebrew, it's called a chatima, which means to make us like a stamp, to close it, to seal it.
Yes,
And in chakra work, we want to make sure that our crown chakra is only open when we want it to be, and not just wide open to anything that wants to come in. We have to make sure it's sealed when needed.
absolutely. Yeah, because when you open to the universe, to spiritual energy, to whatever, you are trusting
Yeah.
that. And when you request it, when you put, this is what I'm allowing in, that's what happens.
Right.
But if you just, are slammed wide open, it's kind of an open invitation to anything to come in.
Which is exactly why when we are connecting with our ancestors, when we're inviting them, when we're in dialogue with them, when we do it consciously or unconsciously, whenever we can have some level of directionality and our own conscious connection with them, to be able to say that you want to invite in anything that's in the service of your own good and keep out anything that would do you harm. But also to say to let anything that's yours, right? Because when we're connecting with our ancestors, there are things that we want to hold. We want to hold that beautiful necklace of yours or the beautiful necklace of mine and carry it forward. And there are things from our ancestors that we don't want to hold. So we have to discern and become aware of what is ours to hold and carry, spiritually or physically, and what is not. And this is where with a buck can stop here. If our ancestors died in pain, we don't want to pass that pain on from generation to generation to generation.
I think that's something I really do want to cover because because there are times when we have recurring dreams that how do we know when it is an ancestor that is reaching out to us to heal something, or and if we have brought it genetically forward, excuse me, how do we tell that's something that is our lineage or from somewhere else that
So those are two actually important and slightly different questions. So sometimes people say, how do we know if it's my lineage or it's like a past life or something? And if something is a repetitive dream, it means that our higher self is trying to get through to us that something's important. If it's a pleasant dream, a nice dream, or a scary dream, or a nightmare, there's something that we need to know and then do something about or take some action on. So we have to pay special attention to those repetitive dreams or repetitive dream themes. But if they are scary dreams or if they are nightmares, I really strongly recommend don't necessarily try to do this alone. Right. A lot of people, particularly in Western society, say, oh, I can do this on my own. I'll pull my bootstraps up and I can do this. And it's like, well, you might be able to, but you don't have to. And part of healing wounds, whether they're from our own life or from an ancestral connection or another lifetime, is to have that empathic, caring, loving connection with others. That in and of itself not only is healing, but that is what was missing during the original traumatic times.
Yeah.
So in addition to a lack of safety in whatever form that lack of safety took, there's a profound aloneness when we're frightened and when we're at risk or when we're hurt. And being with another or doing work in a dream circle provides that container of connection that we all need in our lives. So I'd really recommend that people think about how to do this with others, and then also to discern whatever we're hearing from our dream person, character, relative. They will be very clear if when we wake, we ask some more questions, even if we're not able to do it while we're asleep, but we can actually create a dialogue and you can do it in writing. And I recommend, again, so you don't forget it, or at least, talk into your device, but get both sides. So ask your mom or ask your grandmother, why are you here? And are you in pain? And if so, what kind? And what happened? And then you can figure out whether or not it's something that's actually true in your life. For example, a lot of people walk through life with I'm not good enough, I have no self-worth, I have no self-confidence with that storyline.
Yeah.
Where did that come from? It might be from something that happened in their own life. It might be from the way they were parented, but it might be something that's kind of passed on from generation to generation, where 2 generations ago, someone was orphaned as an infant and spent time in an orphanage and didn't get care or love or connection or feel that they had any self-worth. But since then, they married, had children, and then their children were given a very good home, and their children were giving a loving, good home. But somehow that thread is still gone through.
Yeah.
So then our job is to first become aware. And then once we're aware, we have choice. Is this mine to carry, or is this not mine to carry? And also, what am I then called on to do to help the person who is still suffering? Because they're gone at this point from their physical body. And whatever circumstances they lived in that created the wound, they're not there actually in the physical body anymore, because they're not inhabiting their body at this point.
Yeah.
But we can still help them recognize that they are now held in the light of the all, in the light of spirit, and we can send them love, caring, connection, safety, whatever was lacking for them, and send it with our thoughts, with our breath, with our physical hand motions, with our intentions, and invite them to feel the difference and that transformation so they can complete their journey to be held in the light.
Yeah, that's, I've been fortunate, I've been thinking, ever since I read your book, okay, do I know of any major trauma to any of my ancestors? And I can't find any, but it may sometimes be triggered by a place in your life,
Right,
that resonates to something in their life, and that's what opens the door of the communication and the connection. And
you might also be, if you have, knock on wood, lived to 81 and you can't find a history of trauma in your family system, don't keep looking for it, right? You might be one of those blessed people who have inherited a line of love and connection and positivity, which is why you can do the work you do.
that could well be. But you brought another thing that was in the thing for your book that I kind of want to point out. It says you talked both in sleep and sleep adjacent practices, such as trance meditation and guided imagery.
Yeah.
You don't have to be sleeping to have something like this happen.
That's
or to
right.
deal with it.
That's right. That's right. If you there's a wonderful word, it's called kavanah, and kavanah literally means intention. The root of the word is lekaven, and kivun means direction. So we point ourselves in the direction we want to go with our intentionality, and then we're much more likely to encounter that what we are looking for.
Yeah.
So when we're walking in the woods and we're quiet, we can be looking and listening with intentionality of what we want to heal or hear. When we're sitting in meditation, when we're journaling, and if we do automatic writing, for example, we can start with a question of intentionality and then just sort of create our circle of protection, whatever it is, just open the door for whatever flows through to flow. And you're not asleep, but you're in that adjacent state of relaxation where you have accessible to you information that isn't accessible to your left brain, busy waking mind.
Yeah. Well, I think that's important for people to understand, because I know lots of people say, I don't dream, I don't have nightmares. And it's, maybe you're not remembering them. Maybe it's not something that you're conscious of, but you are capable of getting into that state of recognition of the the other level of material. And it's really, when people say, well, I don't dream, and it's like, yeah, you daydream.
And what's actually true, and you don't want to get into a power struggle with someone, but you can, if they're open to it, say, well, actually, scientifically, everyone dreams 5 to 7 dreams every night because we have REM cycles, and it's been studied by neuroscientists in the lab with electrodes reading our brain waves.
Yeah.
We know, and the eyelids are going. That's what rapid eye movement, REM states, that's the word where it comes from. We just don't remember them. We tend to only remember the dreams we've had just before we wake up. And then we only tend to remember them if remembering is important to us. And if we're waking on our own accord, not by an alarm clock or a buzzer or a bell, because that jars us out of our sleep, perhaps not in the REM state. And if we're jarred out of our sleep in the theta state or the delta state, we're not going to remember our dreams.
I've had a couple of times in my life, well, more than a couple, because I will be having a dream and I will wake and it's like, no, I don't like the way that ended. I'm going back and ending it a different way.
Perfect.
And I do,
That is exactly what I tell some of the people who I work with. I instruct or invite them to do exactly what you did spontaneously. And I say, this isn't where your dream ended. It's just where you woke up.
Yeah.
So it's your dream from your internal creative body, mind, spiritual self. Keep going. Add what you need to, change what you want until you get to an ending that's satisfactory.
And I think, too, people don't understand that our dreams are really, in many ways, giving us the script for what is yet to come.
Yeah.
So that, pay attention and focus on and start visualizing a better world, a kinder world, a more loving world. I mean, and yes, get it down to your own personal life, what you want and what you would like to attract in it. But it's a powerful tool, and most people don't use it.
Right. And no extra charge for when you dream of your own healing and the goodness in your own world, no extra charge for adding the planet.
Oh, yeah, none.
So we have multiple layers in every dream, and one layer is our personal layer, another is our familial layer, and we have our ancestral layer. And then there's the intergalactic, there's the planetary, the transpersonal, the layer of connecting with the ground we walk on with Gaia. And that's all there in all our dreams if we hope to peel back the layers.
I'm glad you mentioned Gaia, because I want you to kind of go into what the Gaia method is and how it's used.
Okay. So just now I reference Gaia as that's the name for our land, or the earth we walk on,
Yeah.
Mother Earth. I had the wonderful synchronicity of adopting that name as an acronym for a method that I developed to work with and heal nightmares. And I thank my dream circle for helping me come up with letters that actually fit into a word that has such a great association.
Oh, yeah.
So in my method, the Gaia method, it stands for Guided Active Imagination Approach. So it's based on sort of 2 pillars. And the first pillar that the work is based on is what we were talking about, is starting with protection. I'm an EMDR practitioner, which is a body-mind form of healing, a therapeutic modality. And in EMDR, before we do the work with the traumatic event or memory, we first do resources. So we gather and develop resources to stay centered, grounded, and safe. And so we do that I borrowed from the idea from EMDR. We do that first in the Gaia method. And then once we've gathered our resources of people, objects, pets, spiritual beings, wrap your favorite angel's wings around you, whatever it is that makes you feel safe, then the next step before moving directly into the dream is to be on the outside of the dream and sort of peek in and see what you see, if there's anything you missed or any resources that might actually be there in the dream already that you might not have noticed the first time you told it. So one leg is this is from EMDR, the resource guide installation, and then the other is grounded in Jungian active imagination, where we, in our waking life, we then take our resources after we've made the bridge of connecting the two. So there's step one, and then the bridge, and then step two. And in step two, with our safety posse, I call it my posse of safety, we
Okay.
go inside the dream and we interact with the dream in order to bring healing, bring a resolution, redream the dream until the characters in the dream, the character that's you or that's standing in for you, has gotten to a safe place and is no longer threatened. And that sort of, in a nutshell, it sort of there's more detail to that, but that's in a nutshell, the Gaia method.
Well, I think too, you had some very good examples of how it was used with people. And and I loved the process, because it was kind of like, you're going into a battle of sorts. How are you going to protect yourself? And you can take anything you want with you. You can, you can muster an army if you need. And it was fascinating how in some of the dreams, when people went back in and were looking for what they missed, they missed what would save them.
Yeah.
And that I thought was fabulous. The lady who was swimming didn't notice that the dolphins were swimming right next to her to guide her to shore. And I think Jason DeBorg uses something similar to this, because as I recall, he had a story kind of similar, that there was something that he hadn't noticed that would have, made everything a lot easier if he had noticed it the first time through. So the great thing is you could repeat this and repeat this and repeat this until you find wholeness.
Exactly right. Until you have come to a place where it feels okay, where you feel that settling in your body, because we are spiritual beings having a physical experience, but we feel things in our bodies. That's why it's called a feeling. So we pay attention to those cues from our body that lets us know, oh, I don't feel safe yet, or yes, I do feel safe now. Our breath, that settling, the muscles relaxing, some cue will let you know when you had the, oh, okay, it's okay now.
Well, I think that's a great thing to point out, because there will be many that will say, kind of, I doubt it, but I'll do this anyhow, just to, I'll go ahead and do it to prove you wrong or whatever. And when you get to a place where you suddenly have that, whoo, and you have to acknowledge it, because it's there. It's like, wow, I am not terrified anymore.
Right.
Or, and it's an amazing process. I think your book just over and over and over illustrates how important this kind of work can be, and especially if you have ancestors that have gone through Holocaust or tribulation of any sort, that you can be there for them, with them, and let them know that they're okay and they're moving on.
That's right. And there are many examples in the book, people who have histories of having been through the Holocaust, people who escaped the famine in Ireland. One of my clients was an African-American woman whose ancestors were slaves. Another colleague of mine had ancestors who were slave holders.
Oh, wow.
And she carried that guilt over through generations of having a family where there were slave holders. So it can come in many different forms. And we had to peel back the images in some of the dreams. Sometimes it's right there. It's the story is what it is. And sometimes there are the layers of getting through the metaphor and the symbolism. But once you have done that and you get that felt sense of relief and calm and, okay, now not only am I safe, but you're safe.
It,
And then you can pass on, this is the key, right? Then you pass on the message to your children and your children's children, rather than you're not safe, danger's lurking around every corner. But yes, you have blessings, you have safety, you don't have to repeat this pattern.
oh yeah, and I think one of the examples that you gave was in the book was a woman who was experiencing the trauma of her ancestor, and so she in her life turned around and in her life donated time, donated energy, donated work. She
That's
put
right.
an end to
That's right.
this generational trauma that had passed generation to generation to generation by
I'm sorry, go ahead.
by making up for it.
Right. So there's the action step, and that actually, that example that you used was this African American woman who had a history of slavery in her past, and she herself was a professor at a university when I
Yeah.
was working with her. And among other things, she became the advisor to the BIPOC organization on campus and helped, people of color and indigenous people to have a voice and come out into a safe place in the world where they could be fully who they are. And that was her return on healing to all the generations that came before her. And as a person who didn't have children, she was passing on that legacy of, you do now have a voice and safety, to all of the students and all of the consultees that she worked with. So it isn't only our biological family that we pass on
Oh
this
yeah,
healing
and
to.
I think one of the other things that you pointed out, I mean, the fact that not only are you able to put to rest trauma, fear, all of that in
Mhm.
a generation behind, but it gives you greater power, you greater strength, and you the ability to move forward and have a richer impact upon the reality that you're living in right now.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I think is really important that I did want to bring out is that if the person has been adopted,
You read my mind or I read yours. That's exactly what I was thinking.
oh, cool.
Yeah, yeah. So we're synced up here. Our daughter was born in China. So we brought her home when she was a year old. And um, so we really paid attention, and she was lucky that I was familiar as a psychotherapist with attachment theory or lack of attachment. So I did a lot of work on that, reading up. And when she was little, I was telling this story just the other day to a friend. One of the symbols or signals when someone doesn't have a secure attachment is they can't make eye contact. So when she was very, very tiny, she would look away. I mean, she just couldn't hold eye contact. So I did this technique that I learned from one of I'm always forgetting his name. The name will come to me. It's just a gentleman who does a lot of work with attachment. And so we played a game where we sat in my lap. She was somewhere between 1 and 2 at the time. And she had to hold eye contact for a few seconds. First, it started with just 5 seconds. And if she could hold eye contact for 5 seconds, she'd get a real kiss and a chocolate candy kiss.
Oh, well.
So we called this Candy Kisses Cuddle Time, was the game we played. And then gradually we built up the time until she could hold eye contact for as long as you want, 30 seconds, a minute. Like, I don't know if you've ever had eye contact with someone for a minute, but it's a long time.
It is.
And this little girl who's now 28 years old is very, very attached. Family is very, very important to her. And she talks about what she's inherited from us, and she means inherited, as
Yes.
well as what she inherited in a different way from her actual birth parents. And we honor both components. And it's really important to anyone who has adoption in their family to honor both of those pieces of whose family.
Tell your story about the grocery store.
This is a great story. So she's about 3 years old. We're in the grocery store. She's young enough to still fit in the shopping cart.
Yeah.
So, and we're in the store, and someone stops us in the grocery store, and she says, "Oh, is this your daughter? And is she adopted?" And I say, "Yes." And this happens quite a bit when you have an adopted child who doesn't look like you. So she's Chinese, so she doesn't look like us. So it's clear right away. So the woman starts asking me all kinds of questions that are just sort of bordering on sort of rude and inappropriate. And I kind of wrap it up as quickly as I can because I don't want to, carry on in the grocery store. And so we move on. And then in a minute or so, I ask my daughter, I say, "Honey, I hope that wasn't too uncomfortable for you. I'm really sorry that woman was asking so many questions." And she looks up at me from the shopping cart. She says, "Mommy, I was so uncomfortable." I said, "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. Tell me what made you uncomfortable and let's see what we can do." And she said, "Mommy, we were standing in front of the freezer section and I was freezing cold. Why couldn't she have asked you in front of the cereal instead?" So, we also don't want to, presuppose that we know what's going on.
Oh,
Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar.
Yeah, no, when I saw that, I thought, sometimes we are so into being appropriate and wanting to catch everything that we tend to make more of things than we need to, and to ask the right questions so that you were guided to the direction to, kind of like, where did I come from? And they went through the whole the man and the woman and the loving, everything, and the kid after sitting through all of it said, "Huh, well, my friend came from Brooklyn."
Right. Right.
It's like
Right. That's right.
wasted time and energy and message
Sometimes less
there.
is more.
Yeah.
And when we're telling our children the story of their history, whether they're adopted or they're not adopted, to really tune into how old are they and what's age appropriate and what's the right amount for this time in their life. Because
Oh,
there's
yeah.
time later to fill in, the nitty-gritty details of other things.
Yeah, just make sure that the details you give are the details that are asked for.
Exactly right. Right. Like Brooklyn, not how the egg and the sperm get together.
Yeah. Probably that story just never went anywhere anyhow. It was kind of like, okay. And it didn't register most probably. I just noticed that we've kind of skewed past the time here.
Oh, yes, that's true, actually.
I do, want to get you back because there are a lot of other questions here that I think are important for people to hear. So I will get a hold of you and we will do this again.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Oh, it was a delight talking to you. And you want to give out your website or where people can get a hold of you?
Absolutely. So my website is www.Linda Schiller. That's all one word, spelled LindaYaelSchiller.com. So that's my home website. And on the website, there are also links for all of my books and all of the various podcasts that I've done. So you can watch this with your friend or other podcasts and things like that.
Okay. And thank you so much. I so enjoyed your book and I so enjoyed sharing with you. And there's a lot here that we haven't actually covered and that I would like to. So I will get a hold of you and we'll do this again.
That's terrific. I would be happy to. All right. Take good care. Have a pleasant evening, Barbara.
You too. Bye-bye now.
So long.
Okay.